Good morning. This is Eric Hasselbusch, and I'd like to welcome you to the roof evaluation webinar this morning. These are a lot of fun for us to share, and our goal today is to provide you with information to help you prepare to manage roofs and complete roof evaluations. That's our goal today. I'll talk through who our presenters are. Again, my name is Eric Hasselbusch. I'm a partner at Benchmark. I've been in the roofing industry for 16 years. Most of my time is spent on business development with some time in consulting. If you would need to reach me for any reason, my cell phone and email are here, and they will be at the end of the presentation as well. I'm glad to have Brad Conlin joining me today. Brad and I have worked together for a long time, both here and at another company. Brad is a registered roof observer. He's had 14 years in the industry, and his time is spent on primarily consulting on the roofing side of the business. I will share a little bit about Benchmark before we get started, just so you know who we are and our background. We're a roof and pavement consulting firm. We've been in business over 30 years. We are independent. As you look at the picture on the bottom, the owners are all somewhere within that photo. We focus on three primary services: evaluation, design bid, and construction phase services. Those things all kind of wrap up into roof management program or roof management program services. We are headquartered in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, with our paving team headquartered in the Waukesha, Wisconsin, or a suburb of Milwaukee. We have 21 satellite locations, and I think we have around 115 employees, and maybe 116 now, as we were fortunate enough to hire a new employee just last week. So Benchmark primarily works within the United States. We do work within North America, Canada, and Mexico, and we have done some work overseas, but that is generally when we have a client has a specific situation where they need help in those locations. We don't try to go find overseas projects. A couple housekeeping items today as we get started. PDH certificates are available today. They're available as a handout. You should see those on your screen where you can download that, put your name on, and you'll have your documentation for the PDH certificate. We'll have a series of 4 poll questions today, and we'll talk about instructions to how to fill those out when those come, but we'll get your input during the session. To submit questions today, on the left-hand side of your screen, or the right-hand side of your screen, excuse me, there'll be a question with a little circle around it. You can see the icon, and you can submit your questions there. We will answer those questions at the end of the session. The session will be recorded. We'll share that recording with you sometime after this is completed. If for some reason you have technical difficulties during the webinar today, please contact Ben Fiedler at 319-640-5736, and he should be able to walk you through those. A couple other things, there's some upcoming webinars. April 30th, May 7th, May 14th, and May 21st, a combination of roof and pavement webinars. Some deal with managing projects during COVID, making sure you're prepared in the future. But take a look at those, and if they're relevant, you'll be getting another email, or you can sign up as you have previously. Hope to see you at those. So let's go ahead and jump into this presentation today. Roof evaluation, reducing cost, extending asset life, and managing risk through proper planning and evaluation. So before we get into the meat of the presentation, I just want to lay this out. What is the impact of COVID-19 on roof evaluations? And I just want to share, these are some things we're seeing in the marketplace when we're talking to our clients. And I think some of these things may be relevant to you and some of the same things you're experiencing. Number one, it's amazing to see the people we talk to and the people we work with at all these companies, how they care for the health and well-being of their employees. I mean, it's just phenomenal to see what they're doing and how they care about their people. So that's really fantastic to see that. Number two, a lot of people we work with, their responsibilities, roles and responsibilities are changing as contingency plans are being put in place for operations, whether it's access to the facility, segmenting within the operational areas of the business, all those, lots and lots of things are changed that I'm sure you're all dealing with on a daily basis. And then finally, those that have responsibility for managing roof and pavement assets do have some concerns that they're going to be falling behind managing those assets as current operations and current activities take place. So we'll talk about some of that today, because what we're seeing is roofs don't stop aging. They're going to continue to age regardless of what's happening in the environment. Benchmark is continuing to do evaluations. Contractors, in most cases, are continuing to work at locations, but some changes are taking place. Number one, no matter what type of project, and I'm sure you're experiencing this now, communication is really important. We're having more communication with our clients than we probably ever have before, talking through projects, access to the site, requirements at the site. All those things are just really important. PPE is changing. In some cases, it changes from day to day, and so we have to stay on top of those things. Limiting interior access. In many cases, we are no longer going inside facilities to look at the decks, to look at leak locations, and to gather information that's relevant to roof evaluations. So there are options, whether it's FaceTiming, whether it's having clients take pictures inside. We just talk through those things. It takes more communication and more planning, but we can work through that. And then the last thing is there are some options with drones. You can potentially gather some preliminary information as part of a roof evaluation using drones. But I would tell you, it is an option, but it doesn't provide you the full amount of information that you need to put a program together. So let's move on from there, and let's talk about the first step in a roof evaluation. It pretty much starts with developing a plan. And what we have learned is those clients and companies that have plans tend to do a much better job of getting funding than those that don't have a plan in place. And we'll touch on many of these items during the session today, primarily focused on planning, and we will touch on repair and maintenance. But we believe it requires plan, design, construct, and repair and maintenance are the 4 phases we generally look at as you develop a full plan. Before we go further, I do want to talk about this concept of a roof management program versus a roof replacement program. In some cases, if your focus is on just replacing and you have a 20-year average life of your roof systems, you're focused on probably about 5% of that roof asset. 95% of those roof assets may not be getting much attention. And that's where managing comes in and repair and maintenance strategies. You don't want to get caught in that trap of just being focused on replacement. You want to be able to look at the asset as a whole so you don't forget about the other 95% as well. So let's look at our first poll question. Why do roofs fail? And Brad, could you verify you're seeing these slides move forward?
I am seeing it move forward, Eric.
Okay, thank you. Ben, I will just let you know I am not seeing the poll question.
The poll is being distributed and they should be able to vote on it now.
You may just have to share that with me, Ben, because I'm not, my audience view is not moving forward. So the poll question on why roofs fail, please go ahead and answer or provide your response to that. And Ben, since I may not be able to see that slide come up, I may have you or Brad share those results if you could.
Absolutely. Right now we have about 35% of votes in, so we will give them a few more seconds to get their votes cast.
So who you just heard is Ben Fiedler. Ben is also a consultant, and he is in the background today. So if we had any issues like this, we've got a third person on the group to answer questions and provide some input as well. And so thanks, Ben. Glad you're here.
Still seeing several votes coming in. They're slowing down, and so at this time I will go ahead and close the poll. And would you like me to go ahead and share results now?
Yeah, if you would, Ben, that would be great.
All right, so the attendees should be able to see this, but the results are 53% voted for poor craftsmanship during install or repair, 86% voted lack of maintenance or maintenance funding, 45% voted abuse or physical damage, 49% voted environmental issues, condensation, fire, wind, or hail, and 49% voted material reached end of useful life.
Thank you, Ben. So that's always an interesting question, why roofs fail. And we kind of pose this question a little bit differently, but materials reaching the end of their service life is why we want roofs to fail. We want them to fail when they reach the end of their design life or end of service life. We don't want all those other issues in there to cause them to fail. If we have proper design, proper installation, as well as ongoing roof management program, we should reduce the risk of those other things impacting or causing those roofs to fail. And we should be able to get that roof to fail when it's reached its design life. So thanks for sharing that, Ben. We're going to move on to evaluation. We're going to touch on 4 areas. Why, or what is the goal of a roof evaluation? When and how often do you do a roof evaluation? What does a roof evaluation include? And who or what is their motivation for doing a roof evaluation? And you'll hear more about this when Brad talks about this later as well. So let's talk about the goals of a roof evaluation. We start with, what's the inventory? Do we know the size, type of roof systems we have, and the age of our roofs? We want to have accurate condition information. Do we know the condition so we can estimate service life potential? Is this roof going to last 2 more years? Or does it have the potential to last 10 plus years? We look at risk. And the things we're sharing today are not just specific to Benchmark. These are things, whether you do your own evaluations, whether someone else does those evaluations, this is content we think it's important to include in a program, an evaluation program. We look at risk. We call it RIRA, Roof Inventory Risk Assessment, looking at the sensitivity for water coming into the building below that roof system. If you have a processing area versus a warehouse, there's higher risk or higher damage can be done if water comes into a processing area versus a warehouse, generally. So we look at what's going on inside of this building. Determine the need for preventive maintenance and repairs. Do we need to do preventive maintenance and repairs? In most cases, yes. Justifying a budget. How do you prioritize where you spend the first dollar that you have available to yourself? And the last 2 pieces, take action and plan for the future. You know, in many cases, don't have anybody evaluate your roofs unless you're going to take action or develop a plan. We've seen clients that we've gone out and done an evaluation. You come back 3 years later and they still haven't taken action. Roofs have more damage, costs go up. So really think about how you're going to take action if you implement something like this. So what we're trying to accomplish with managing a roof is to maximize the service life. And this is what we call a deterioration curve. On the left-hand side, you have the condition. On the bottom, you have roof age. The first curve you see ends at about 17 years, and 17 years is the average roof life per NRCA information. Some roofs may fail at 10 to 12 years. Some may live out to 25, 30 years. But our goal in every case is how can you take that curve wherever you are or wherever that individual roof section is and extend that roof life to maximize service life potential. Can we add another 2 years, another 5 years, another 10 years? How do we extend the life of that asset? That's the first and foremost thing we want to be thinking about. So let's look at poll question number 2, please, Ben. And again, I'll have you share that and read that since I'm not seeing those.
Yes, the second poll question is, do you know the average age of your roof portfolio? And I apologize for that typo. We will give you about a minute and a half to get your answers in. All right, looks like voting is starting to slow down. We have about 74% voted at this point. Give you a few more seconds and then we will close the poll. All righty, and I am sharing the results now. And the results to, do you know the average age of your roof portfolio? 50% said yes and 50% said no. The results were right down the middle.
Thanks, Ben. Well, that's good to know. Those of you that know the age of your roofs, you're one step ahead, and it puts you in a position to start being able to manage those assets and evaluate them going forward. Those that don't know the age, there's some risk with not having that information. And in some cases, there may be some historical documents you can look at inside a company. In other cases, it may just take some digging to find that information. So let's take a look at the next step in the process. As you are starting to gather data and information, starting with age, you have to store that data somewhere. Store the data, and then that allows you an opportunity to start developing a plan once you have that data. Benchmark has a database we use, but there are other databases as well. You may have your own in some cases, but you really need to be able to store data so you can develop and track activities in a plan as you go forward. So let's look at a couple real life situations, but we'll start with a hypothetical situation. In this case, we've got just under a 600,000 square feet facility, and this is a perfect condition where every 5 years, through 1 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 to 15, 16 to 20, every 5 years, 20% of the roof assets were replaced at that location. This doesn't happen in a real world, but that would be an ideal situation. So let's take a look at some real world situations. We're going to look at company 1 and company 2. Company 1, you can see in the last 15 years, 1 to 5, 6 to 10, 11, 15, they've replaced probably 65% of their roofs in that time frame. So they've replaced a lot of roofs in the last 15 years. Company 2, the profile looks significantly different. They haven't replaced that many roofs in the first 15 years or the last 15 years, but they replaced a lot in that 11 to 20, 11 to 30 time frame. You can start to see where the importance of age comes into knowing how long are my roofs going to perform. So let's see what this tells us. So we start transition from knowing the age. If you complete an evaluation, you can now start looking at what does our replacement schedule look like and why is that data important. So in this case, as we look at company 1, if you're replacing 5% of your roofs every year, you'd be in that 20-25% every 5 years. And in this case, 1 to 5 years, you're 17%, really in a good position as a company. 6 to 10 is a little more than we'd like to see, but still pretty good. And those roofs that will be replaced sometime after 11 years is good. So this company has a pretty good profile. We look at company number 2. If you look at the blue, which is the 1 to 5 years, you could say, 22% of the roofs need to be replaced in the next 5 years. That's not too bad. That's potentially manageable. But when you see the red, it really kind of keys a red flag that sometime in 6 to 10 years from now, you potentially have to replace 72% of your roofs. That is a big, big challenge in a tidal wave of capital expenditures. So as you look at the two scenarios, where you spend your money and the type of funding you need could change dramatically. In the first case, you may have a mix of capital and expense money. In this case, in a perfect world, you may take your capital money for those 1 to 5 year replacements, not do any replacements for a year, and shift all those funds to repair and maintenance on those roofs that are 6 to 10 years, hoping to shrink the red and grow the green. I know that's not always realistic, that you can shift capital to expense, repair and maintenance projects. That's just the world that most companies live in. But it also allows you to go talk to the finance folks, other team members, to say, here's the situation we're facing. What can we do to get access to more expense funds to manage this program and expand that green and reduce that red? That's why data is so important as you look at managing your assets. So the next piece we get into, how do you start prioritizing? You have to have some sort of way to manage your budgets and prioritize those budgets. In this case, if you look at the top left-hand corner of the screen, you'll see 2 columns, an ARCI column and a RIRA column, RA column. 2 ways you can sort your data. The first column is based on the condition. It totals up all the areas we look at on a roof, and you can sort higher number, poorer condition. The RIRA rating is based on risk. The primary driver on that has to do with interior sensitivity to moisture, as I mentioned earlier. And so bright red means highly sensitive to moisture infiltration, or it could be high probability of something significant happening to that roof if it's not replaced immediately, like collapse or significant deck replacement, or high cost increase could also drive that number into a red area. We need clients' input to help us look at interior sensitivity. Then you move to the right side of that, where you see years 2020, 21 through 23. There's generally 5 years there. I cut 2024 off to fit on the screen better. That starts showing us by roof section at a facility. Red is replacement, yellow or F is repair, white is preventive maintenance, and light blue, which you see down below, is for coatings. We don't have any coatings identified in this example. But in this case, you now can start looking at where do we spend our first dollar and how do we prioritize and what do we need to spend in itself. In the bottom right-hand corner, just provides you the totals by year of replacement, coating, repair and maintenance dollars for this facility and these various roof sections totaled. But again, it's a planning tool to help you determine what kind of funding do we need for repair and or capital expenses. So let's go to our next poll question. How often should roof inspections be completed?
All right, that poll has been launched. And as Eric mentioned, the poll is how often should roof inspections be completed? And this is, you can select more than one answer for this poll. The options are after major weather events, a 1-year cycle, a 3-year cycle, a 5-year cycle, or not at all. As before, we will give you about 1.5 minutes to get your votes in, and we will share the results after.
This is a question we get asked an awful lot. How often should we inspect roofs? And we'll talk a little bit more about that once we see the answers. It's always interesting to see what our clients and their perspective of how often their roof should be inspected. It's always a good discussion.
Give you about 20 more seconds and we will get going. All righty, and the results to how often should roof inspections be completed. 56% of people voted after major weather events. 44% voted a 1-year cycle. 28% voted a 3-year cycle. 26% voted a 5-year cycle, and 2% voted not at all.
All right, thanks, Ben. Good information. So as I go ahead here, we look at when is the time to do the first best assessment. We typically think in many cases, when you have a roof project completed, you'll have a 2-year contractor warranty. We do like to see some sort of assessment completed prior to the expiration of that 2-year warranty, so issues that have been identified can be corrected by the contractor who installed the roof. So I think that's number one, is a great time to do it. Number two is you talk about reactive. We talked about weather events, and I think 56% of you said, yep, after weather events, absolutely. Anytime you have some sort of a severe weather event, somebody should walk your roofs, whether it's your own personnel, as long as they can be safe, a contractor, or someone like Benchmark. But you want to look for, have items blown across a roof? Has there been other damage to perimeter edges, edge metal blown off that you can see from even down below? Very important after reactive or weather events. So proactive, it's really not always an easy answer, and we can see between 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, and not at all. I would say not at all. You should probably consider having your roof at least evaluated on a 3 to 5 year basis. And again, it depends on what's going on in your facility. Age plays a role. If your portfolio looked like company number 2 and you've got a very old portfolio, you want to think about inspecting or evaluating more frequently. What types of roof you have, the condition, are they in good condition or are they in failing condition? All these things, slope. Brad will share an example and a story about how slope plays into how often you should evaluate a roof. Is there a lot of traffic? Do your roofs function as work surfaces? The more traffic you have, you should probably consider having more frequent evaluations. And finally, sensitivity. Is there highly sensitive activities taking place underneath that roof that if moisture comes into is going to cause major problems? So we generally look at between 6 months and 3 years as a range. Again, it really depends on your specific situation, and those are conversations you need to sit down and just talk through with whoever's doing your evaluations, what's best for your specific facility. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Brad, and he's going to start talking about what does an evaluation include.
Oh, one slide too many. Thank you, Eric. And also thank you to everybody joining us on the webinar today. We appreciate you joining us. So what does a roof evaluation include? Before we kind of get into that, the first thing really to think about is, keep an open mind, be slow to judgment. If you look at the photo on the right, the image, that was taken on a 15-year-old roof. And the owner of the roof called a contractor because they were experiencing roof leaks. And after receiving a quote for $500,000, they hired us for further evaluation. And we came in, we did a visual review and a moisture survey with an infrared scan, and revealed that it wasn't the roof that was leaking, but it was the adjacent walls and windows. And after receiving a second quote for $100,000, they went ahead and they did some minor roof repairs and fixed the walls and windows. So by keeping an open mind and pursuing the situation, they were able to make a better decision. It's important to review the records. Know the age of your roofs. What's your leak history? Those are all important considerations in a roof evaluation. Visual review. We'll do a visual review of the interior and the exterior, and we'll get more into that later on here. But also core sampling and optional moisture testing, like we just discussed, are also real good evaluation methods to help determine the condition of a roof. Not advancing here. There we go. When approaching a roof evaluation, I always like to start with the interior. Now, in today's environment with COVID, that can be a little different. You maybe have to be a little bit creative. But with the client support, as Eric mentioned earlier, with videos, FaceTime, we can still get a good indication of what may be happening inside your facility. What is important is that we identify the deck types, is it steel, concrete, the condition of the deck, is there spalling, staining, rust, or corrosion, and also, of course, leaks, where are the leak locations. We also want to understand your occupancy. Is it a warehouse? Is it production? Is it office space, etc.? These are all important factors to know your sensitivity. And what's the interior environment like? You have high temperatures, high humidity. Is it a cooler, freezer, or is it non-conditioned space? And it's important because whatever happens on the inside of your roof can affect the performance of your roof system. An example of that would be if you had a high temperature, high humidity interior, vapor drive would force that air up into your roof system where it can cool and condensate and start to drip back inside. And that could give you a false indication that your roof is leaking. Here is an example of visual inspection of the perimeter flashings. As you can see, obviously the flashings are in poor to failed condition. They're leaking. And the first conclusion you might come to is my roof is failing. But you don't necessarily just want to give up there. You want to extend your evaluation of the feel of the roof. What's the condition of the feel of the roof, and is it still in serviceable condition? Because this could be a really good opportunity to where you could do a repair at your perimeter flashings that would align with the expected remaining service life of your roof, and you would get 10 more years out of life of this roof. And similarly, there's other common problems on a roof that could be identified during roof evaluations that would help extend or maintain the life of your roofs. Sheet metal. This is a photo of a newly installed roof, and the owner was having leaks, and they couldn't find any deficiencies in the roof to determine, what the cause of the leaks were. They hired us to come in and do an evaluation. We looked at the walls, and what we noticed is there were some gaps in the sheet metal on the wall, and also there was a drape cover missing on the top of the wall. So what we specified is that the installing contractor, the original contractor, come in, remove the coping cap, install a drape cover, a peel and stick on top of the wall, and then reinstall the coping, sealing the joints. This was all done at no cost to the owner because the roof was still under the contractor's warranty period. This is a good example of why roof evaluations are important on newly installed roofs as well. I'm not advancing here. There we go. Penetrations. Penetrations are also going to be standard protocol for a roof evaluation. Now, this is an extreme example here, but all penetrations are going to have seams, and consequently, the higher density of penetrations you have on a roof, the more seams you're going to have, and there's more risk for water entry. So roofs with more penetrations should be inspected more often. Drainage. Eric did mention this before as well. The longer water can stay on the roof, same way with the roof inspector, the more opportunity there is to find punctures, open seams, and find leaks into the building. If you look across the roof and you see that the penetrations in the background, imagine if those penetrations had the same seam condition or deficiencies we saw in the previous photo. You'd have a disaster. So it's important to think, roofs with poor drainage have higher risk and need inspection more often. So, you ask yourself, how often would you inspect this roof? Different types of roofs, may vary in their evaluation a little bit. These are the most common types. You have built-up roofs, modified bitumen roofs, single plies, metal roofs, and polyurethane foam. Core samples help evaluate the condition. Coal tar or asphalt is the primary waterproofing component in a built-up roof. Aged asphalt or coal tar, as it becomes brittle, it cracks and breaks down, allowing water to penetrate into the roof system. So as a built-up roof ages, more frequent inspections are important to monitor the integrity of the coal tar and the asphalt. This is another example of a core sample that was taken from a built-up roof. What this one is showing is poor interply adhesion between the felts. Lack of adhesion, of course, would create a risk that the roof could sustain damage during a wind event. Core samples can also reveal the integrity of mechanical attachment. Mechanical attachment is common on several roof types for insulation, membrane, or both. These photos show metal fasteners and plates out of single-ply roof that were damaged or corroded from moisture that was present in the roof system. So roofs that are experiencing leaks or for other reasons would have moisture that could be contained in the roof system should be inspected more frequently. Visual inspection is also a lot of what we do. In fact, we probably gather more information from visual inspection than any other type of inspection. This is a photo of a 9-year-old TPO roof, and you can see there along the seam there's a crack where it's indicating this membrane is becoming very brittle. When single-ply membranes get brittle, they can fail very rapidly. So a roof like this, emergency repairs may be a remedy in the short term, but in the long term, this roof should be scheduled for replacement, or not in the long term, but in the short term, this roof should be scheduled for replacement and inspected frequently until that can take place.
And keep in mind, the roof that Brad just showed was a 9-year-old roof.
Thank you, Eric. The infrared or moisture evaluations play a real important role in roof evaluations. This is an example of a survey that took place on a 2-year-old built-up roof, and no one was expecting that there would be any wet insulation or leaks found in this newly installed roof. The infrared moisture testing revealed some wet insulation around a pipe, and it also helped lead to further investigation to find the source of the leak, which was not readily found during just normal visual inspection. This is an example of how a moisture survey can provide a large return on investment by catching a deficiency in the roof early and being able to deal with a small repair rather than letting it go on, become a larger, more costly repair, or even reduce the expected life of the roof system.
Thanks, Brad. Let's take a look at another poll question focused on using UAVs or drone technology to help manage your roof and pavement assets. Ben, can you pull that up, please?
Yes, I just launched the poll. The question is, has your site utilized UAV or drone technology to help manage your roof and pavement assets? Once again, we'll give you about 1.5 minutes to respond. Getting a lot of great responses in. We're getting pretty good results. So I think we will end this in a few seconds here. Last call for votes. All right. And the results to the poll: has your site utilized UAV drone technology to help manage your roof and pavement assets? 24% responded yes, and 76% responded no.
Thanks, Ben. You know, this is an area that seems to be having some growth. I think as we started this out and we talked about, Brad talked about being slow to judge and keep an open mind. I think just like everything else we've talked about today, drones are one other tool that can be used as part of an evaluation program. They're not the end all be all, but they are an option that that you can look at. And if some of you have done some significant work with drones on roof and pavement, I would really appreciate it if you would actually give me a call or shoot me an email. I'd like to talk about and see how it's working for you and what you're seeing. We'd appreciate that. So let's talk about what we've seen from drones. It does provide a different perspective. It allows us to get to some sites when we may not be able to physically get on the site, but we don't believe it replaces boots on the ground. It enhances that process in some cases. So some of the information you can get from drones, I'm showing stills here, but you can actually have live 360-degree roof images from a drone. And as you look at this image on the right-hand side, you'll see a little person icon with a yellow field of view. That's just showing the perspective this photo is looking at. If you were live right now, you could actually walk across that roof and see this whole roof. Sometimes this can be used for pre-bid meetings, pre-construction meetings. If you're going to relocate equipment from the interior, you may have multiple people on a meeting from different locations, different facilities. You can actually now be almost live walking across the top of the roof to see what changes we make inside, how will they show up on the outside, what's on the outside. So especially useful in a lot of situations and during this COVID environment. 45-degree angle images, still images from around the outside of the facility. Imagine if you're sitting in a location in California, you've got properties across the country. You can see landscaping issues, you can see traffic pattern issues, you can see the facility from afar without having to be on site to see are there issues that need to be addressed. Orthomosaic images, top down. Imagine a Google Earth image on steroids where you can zoom in. If you look at the left-hand side of the picture, that is a access hatch zoomed in very close, so you can get very high definition imagery. You can lay roof drawings over top of this. It works well as you're looking at the site. Again, we look at the rest of the facility. If you're looking at walls and windows or other perimeter activities, these images happen to be from the ground level, but they can be from a drone or ground level. If there are other issues you want to be able to see related to walls, windows, etc., you can get some real good imagery to see this. So Brad talked about infrared moisture scans and had a very good example. In this case, this was a sample image taken at a sample location just to be able to show some of these things because we obviously cannot show client data. So in this case, it was a photo taken early. You don't see anything that shows, looks like wet moisture within the roof system. You do see a hot stack towards the middle that's bright yellow, likely a hot stack or some other vent on the roof. But the lighter color on the top side is really related to the time of day, and you still got heat coming from the sun as you look at the shadows. But you can do infrared surveys, and we are doing some of those now. But again, like with anything, infrared is just one tool. You have to verify, is there moisture in a roof system? You can't just depend on an infrared providing you 100% accuracy or good information depending on the type of roof system you're even looking at. So Brad, let's talk a little bit about the maintenance and repair component.
Thank you, Eric. Maintenance and repair is the best way to get the longest useful life or the extended life out of your roofing asset. A successful management program requires regular inspections, scheduled maintenance, timely repairs. Most importantly, a successful roof management program requires sound judgment and good decisions. For this to happen, somebody needs to be designated as a champion for your roof. Someone needs to be responsible for your roof management program. A roof management program has an extremely high return on investment if done correctly and wisely. So speaking of making wise decisions, earlier we discussed the attributes of asphalt materials. Dried out asphalt provides a poor adhesion between the plies, and the brittleness can lead to cracks in the roof cover. The roof in this photo did have some laboratory testing done to prove that it had a high softening point, and severe embrittlement. It would not be wise to make a long-term investment into this roof. Emergency repairs would most likely be the only option to replacement. If you look at the crack in the middle of this roof, you can see where they did a repair in the beginning and the crack just kept going and continued to split across the roof. To summarize, a repair and maintenance strategy is the core for maximizing the life expectancy for roofing assets. Roof evaluations are a key component of that strategy. Repairs provide the highest return on investment when they're executed to align with the expected service life of your roof. Improper repairs or repairs on roofs which should have been replaced are not a sound investment and a waste of money. Workmanship in any is going to be the number one component in any quality repair. It can be the right repair. It can be a repair that's going to align with the expected life of your roof, but if it's done improperly, it will fail. So workmanship is key to making that happen. And also, we talked about before, but maintain good records. Document your repairs, document your leaks. Having a good history will help you make good decisions in the future regarding your roof.
Thanks, Brad. So as we draw a conclusion and try to bring this into a summary in the last two slides, we really want to look hard at the data. If we have good data going in, we can make good decisions. And that data needs to relate to the condition of the asset, as well as how does risk play into that. Do we know the predicted service life potential? Brad shared an example earlier where there were flashings that were damaged and allowing water in, but the field of the roof was in good condition. There's no reason to replace that roof. We knew the field of the membrane had 10 years left. Replace those flashings, and now you have a full system that'll go another 10 plus years. So it's important to know how long will that roof last. If that field of the roof is only going to last 2 years, you might not want to repair those flashings, or you do emergency repairs short term and replace the roof. So as we look at evaluating and making decisions, can roofs be repaired? Number one thing, we always want to be able to extend the life by doing repair and maintenance. Absolutely the first thing we want to look at. Number two, we start looking at cost and service life, and we can evaluate some life cycle cost, do some life cycle cost analysis of looking at repair versus replacement. And then the last component is risk and reliability. How much risk are you, the owner, willing to take on by either approaching repairs and maintenance, or should you replace that roof based on what's underneath that roof area? You can make good decisions at this point, and you've got information you need to ask for funding or make sound funding requests. And the last thing is really a summary. It starts with having good information, having the knowledge, objective review. We can't stress enough, if there's nothing else you take away from this today, it is making sure the information you have that you're basing decisions on is objective. It's information for you so you can make good business decisions. Absolutely critical. It's so easy, especially for people who've been doing this a long time, if you're not thinking about this, to walk up and say, I know what's wrong. And unfortunately, it's not always as easy as that. It does take real time and thinking to understand why some of these roofs are performing the way they are. Knowing the material and where that roof falls on the deterioration curve helps you make decisions. Do I repair? Do I replace? And if you have multiple facilities, especially if you have multiple facilities, you need some sort of a database and likely CAD drawing so you can manage and organize your information. If you have all those things, now you can start looking at having an accurate budget forecast for the next 5 years, and you can take action. You can have repairs and maintenance done when it's going to be cost effective, when you're going to have an impact on extending the asset of that life versus just doing emergency repairs. And finally, you need to have a trusted contractor that can do repair and maintenance for you. It is the #1 thing you can do to extend the life of your roof. Have a sound contractor who's making repairs and maintenance and making them properly. It's a really good return on investment. So that's all we have today. And it looks like we have a few minutes left. So if there are any questions, Ben, and I can't see those. So if some questions came in, Ben, could you share those? And either you can answer them or Brad or I will field them, depending on the question, please, Ben.
Absolutely. As Eric mentioned, we'll do question and answers now. To submit questions, on the right-hand side of your screen, you should see a little question mark. You can click there and submit your questions into us. The first question is, once you have a survey completed, how do you communicate those repairs to a contractor? Eric, if you want to go ahead and take that question.
Yeah, that'd be great. In this case, we didn't go into great depth or even show an image of this based on time today. But in the case for Benchmark, we have CAD drawings that are to scale, showing a roof section and all the penetrations, units, and everything on that roof. And then we have probably 70 different action codes that would be associated with deficiencies we identify on the roof. So as we identify a deficiency, we mark that deficiency on a drawing on an iPad, and then that is associated with a specific deficiency. So as you get done with one roof section, you may have between, say 3 and 15 different deficiencies that can be shared with a contractor, and the work can be completed on a time and expense basis. If you have a trusted relationship with the contractor, we can actually take that information, and as we talk about it up front, we can include a repair spec as part of the evaluation. So when we're done with the evaluation, we can provide a repair specification, taking into consideration that includes all those deficiencies identified. You can take that document out and have contractors bid on the repair specification to get that work done. So those are a couple ways you can do it. The third way would be, and we've got some clients that choose to do this, we actually will have a consultant meet a contractor on site. They will talk through the repairs in a conference call prior to coming to the site, what type of materials we need, what type of repairs are we going to be making. And then we will actually be on site and discuss some of those more critical repairs and evaluate and review the repairs to ensure they're done and installed correctly at that time. So 3 different ways you can look at that. Really depends on the situation and capabilities of your contractor and your funding process.
Thank you for that answer, Eric. We have another couple questions. Both of them are kind of regarding infrared thermography. And so the first one is, are there infrared cameras to be used with a drone to survey an existing roof? And does Benchmark use that technology? And yet I will actually go ahead and answer that one. And yes, there is infrared cameras that are able to be mounted on drones, and we have used those on several projects. As with any infrared scan, you got to make sure you take into account all the conditions and make sure that the scan is being conducted correctly. But yes, there is infrared drone technology. The other question we have is, how often should a infrared moisture survey be conducted? Brad, if you want to go ahead and answer that question.
Thanks, Ben. That really is a question the same as how often would you do a roof evaluation on your roof. I think as a building owner, you need to take a look at your facility and think, what are my risks and what is the likelihood that maybe I have moisture in my roof? If I had to make recommendations, I would say, early in a roof's life, I think it's important because after construction, especially on new construction projects, there's been lots of foot traffic on a roof. By the time the project is done, there may have been quite a time lapse, and the roof has gone through some weather changes and there could be moisture in the roof system, and it would be good to find that sooner rather than later, as we discussed in the webinar as well, to get those repaired under warranty. Another situation you might want to do with roof moisture survey more often would be if you had a vapor barrier on the roof. If you have a vapor retarder on the roof, you've got a membrane on the deck and a membrane on the top. If you have leaks, water gets into the system, but you may not notice them inside the building. So you may want to do moisture surveys more often to see if you can indicate that there is, in fact, moisture infiltrating your roof system.
One other comment as it relates to infrared moisture scans. You know, when somebody shows them to you and talks about them, they can look pretty amazing, and you can just think, wow, all I need to do is scan my roof and I've got everything I need to know and all the information I would need. It doesn't always work quite that simply. The type of roof systems you have, in some cases the age or thermal reflectivity of those roof systems will all impact how well that infrared moisture scan works. And so it's really important, if you're going to have a scan done, you need to use a combination of other tools as well, such as a capacitance meter, core samples, or nuclear scan, even in some cases, to validate, are we getting accurate readings? Because you can get false positives from different types of insulation, from heat coming through the inside of the building. Even if parts of a roof have been replaced before, and they will backfill with different types of insulation. So infrareds are just a tool, but again, like any tool, you need to have other options to verify that you're getting accurate readings. And in some cases, some roof membranes can be very difficult to get accurate readings on.
Very good. Thank you, Eric. And that looks like we have answered all of the questions that were submitted.
Well, thank you. We appreciate you taking the time today to join us. If you have any questions and about anything you're doing, a project you have going on, or just a question, something you didn't understand, didn't want to ask today, please give Brad or myself a call. We'll be glad to talk to you. And we won't turn on or send you an invoice just for a phone call. So if there's anything we can do to help you and assist during these times, we'd be more than happy to. So thanks for attending and have a great day.